And you are live. You are live.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining for today session. And actually, if you've managed to become or join the previous session, that was really helpful. Today, I would like to continue the topic realistically and share with you what we came across with our CISOs and our customers that we experienced. And we would like to share with you how we can address actually the top 5 CISO priorities from our experience and from our vision. So realistically looking around and looking back to this year, I think it was an exceptional year for everyone. One of the biggest risks I think that we came across, it was the lockdowns and the pandemics that happened across the globe. And I believe the CISOs and CIOs of all the companies and the majority of the companies has experienced similar issues across the globe, across the countries and across the industries. So one of the topics that was actually crossing the minds of CISO that we came across is what is the risk and how we can work with it. And the first realistically point that we would like to share is the remote work, and it was resonated with CISOs. And generally speaking, this sentence by McKinsey & Company summarizes what the CISOs was sharing with us in terms of the situation. And it's funny enough, actually, how the time flies. And if you think about it, the summertime and the springtime that we saw the case, the first wave came across, people had to react very quickly. And then the second wave came in recently, and you would like to think that most of the companies should be ready by now. But we came across that it's still not the case. And according to the Gartner, actually, research, up to 74% of companies don't want their employees to return to the office in the nearest future. So the new normal, as most of the people are saying, is already here in a sense that there is a huge shift from office-based work, which is not a surprise, to the remote work. And the shift itself, initially it was so dramatic for some of the companies, and it was so fast moving that a lot of people, a lot of CIOs and a lot of CISOs and generally the IT departments didn't have a chance to do a proper planning what they would do with those remote forces that went to work remotely, what are the risks involved in that shift, and generally what to expect from the security point of view as well as from the management point of view. So in the first place, in the first instance, we came across that a lot of people and a lot of IT departments were focusing on the primarily focus, and the primarily task is just to keep people productive. And it was the most important for everyone, is just to keep the people connected, keep the employees operational, but not only from operational point of sight, from the work related, but from the IT side, because the amount of tasks, the amount of pressure for the IT departments across the globe was phenomenal. And realistically, as a result or as a consequences, with all this rush happening in the springtime and throughout the year, a lot of people were focusing on primarily on getting the people, as I've said before, operational. And the security in some of the occasions became as an afterthought. I know you still need to think about the security, and I'm sure that CISOs were still thinking about the security, but the business needs and the business circumstances that were happening at that point of time, the main task was dominating everything else. So it was just to give an access to your workforce or to your employees, the access to the operation systems, to the access to the work, and keep them operational in the first place. And as a result of that, quite oftenly, unfortunately, or if you think about it, fortunately, in some of the occasions, depends what is your company is, you actually, most probably your IT departments were given an access to some of the applications that usually in normal circumstances your workforce wouldn't have access to. Let's give an example, the file sharing platforms or file sharing applications that might not be an option for you before, or for some of the companies, were actually a lifesaver in some of the occasions, or under some circumstances, some of the applications were used either as file sharing or messaging apps. That would be another good example. Might not be a part of choice of the company that you would do in a normal circumstances. You just want to keep the people operating without thinking as a result of the consequences at that time. At the same time, another big wave that we came across and was actually mentioned across our interviews with the CISOs and the companies is a huge use or a huge increase of BYOD devices that were actually brought by the companies and by the employees to the companies' networks and companies' infrastructure. Under normal circumstances, most of the time, not most of the time, but some of the time, these BYOD devices wouldn't be allowed in some of the company networks and some of the companies. But usually, because all the access is managed by or provided by managed devices, and all this situation actually created additional stress to the IT departments, how do you manage it, BYOD devices, and what is allowed. And on top of it, BYOD device can be realistically, in some of the occasions, can be a lifesaver for the companies, especially once you move on throughout the crisis, throughout the pandemic. So nowadays in the springtime or coming to the summer/autumn time, when the access, more or less called this workforce, is still operational remotely, but more and more people are working remotely, not getting access to the offices, or offices are closed because of the lockdown. BYOD device can be a good solution for fixing the managed devices problems. In terms of, let's have an example. You have a new person who's joining the company, or one of the managed devices actually broken down, whereas previously the employee would just go to the IT department of the company and just get it fixed, or would be able to actually fix it remotely relatively easily. And nowadays, with the pandemic happening or the lockdowns happening, it's no longer an option. So BYOD might be actually an easy option to consider to be productive for the company, to allow your employee to be productive very easily. But at the same time, all of it also brings, BYOD devices also brings a lot of risk in terms of what application has been used and how it's been used. This BYOD device, how it's been used on a local level, on a human level, employee level. And in a sense, all this stress and all this situation actually moves to the fact that a lot of people or a lot of companies and IT structures and IT departments are starting to lock down the access to the applications, and they might be more reliant on just blocking some of the application. But the human being is such that most of the time we will find a solution, or find a different application, different solution, how to use and how to make your life as much as easier. And again, with BYOD devices, a lot of people will be using this laptop or this mobile phone not only for the professional or for your work task, but also for their private task and private life, which actually makes, as it's called, human firewall hygiene a little bit less, in terms of that users can be actually using or logging in with the same device to the different accounts to maybe go to the G Drive or go to the Yahoo accounts and try to actually to send the files from here and there. And then it all depends how it's set up, and your information can be shared actually, or your company's information can be shared through the private accounts, which is not ideal, but it can happen. And realistically, the IT departments need to think about and need to address that very quickly, and hopefully securely. So moving forwards, with actually with the current situation, how we're doing it, if we will be looking on some of the tasks, how it can be done, or one of the actually benefits of using one of the solutions that we actually utilize as well, for example, rather than relying on moving or locking the device itself, we consider that actually we are managing not the device, but we are managing the data flow and the data where it's located and how it's actually divided. So you can basically make sure that even though you have an access to the data, you make sure that a specific user don't have rights or not allowed to send the information or get access from specific locations, and making sure that the data is blocked before it leaves the devices or leaves the server in that respect. And another question actually is how to make it more efficient with less efforts from the company. So realistically, if you think about it, there is like a legacy security, as we call it, and the SASE security approaches. A lot of CIOs or CISOs actually got a lot of devices of how to actually how to protect the data and what they need to actually to do in order to protect the data and in order to consider what's the cost for the security. Pardon me. Security implementations. We also actually seen a lot of time when the discussion occurred when the same approach is actually utilized to the perimeter in the legacy security technologies or legacy approaches. So in that respect, if you think about it, there is a lot of thoughts around the IDSS, the firewalls, DLP, and the web security. And realistically, in moving to the SASE security model, you don't have to recreate realistically a bicycle again. All your policies, a majority of your policies that you already have in your on-prem or legacy security, as we call it, can be easily transferred into the SASE security model. Realistically, it's much easier. It's a similar approach, but the benefit of it is it's done centrally, so the SASE platform, rather than basing on several different vendors, several different approaches, several different tasks and platforms and control units. Then is done centrally through the SASE security. And realistically speaking, if you look wider, we're all going through the perimeter merging process one way or another way. And it's much easier to manage it through one central platform, one central tool. And realistically, it doesn't significantly differ from the Secure Access Service Edge, as we call it, the SASE. This is actually termed by Gartner, and it combines realistically the technologies such as IDSS, DLP, CASB, threat protection to one big security platform, if I can say so, or one big central platform that you can actually manage all those underlying risks within one platform that can solve a lot of problems. So that cuts a lot of costs from one hand, but at the same time, it's makes life of your IT department and IT and CISOs much easier, because you don't, as I mentioned before, you don't log in and you don't set up several platforms. You go to one central platform, one central point, if I can say so, and manage your security. So another question that actually came across during the previous presentations throughout the day, and I think it goes exactly the same for us. Looking into it, in the beginning of the year, we all wondered how long it will last. Now again, we have a very high hopes with vaccine coming in, and there is high hope that actually things will improve in the future. But at the same time, a lot of companies, and I don't think it will change in the nearest future, just with the mindset it still takes some time even for the vaccines to actually to to be available for the market and to get it actually immunized and utilized to the public. It shows that, as I mentioned before, by Gartner and other actually research analysts are saying the same, that a lot of employees won't be returning back to their normal previous life in terms of going back to work into the offices. It will be more based on the remote working. And realistically, we are looking into it now. We don't think it will change significantly in the next 12 months. And we believe moving forwards, it will become more widely acceptable even than now, the new norm, if you can think, so that it will be remote work. And even after the lockdown and after the pandemic, I think it will be a mix of office and remote work, and with a bit more lean towards the second option. But in this case, all of that means that, all that summarize that actually IT departments, for the IT departments, there will be even bigger and wider footprint to look after in IT perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective. So realistically, in a current situation, or the current how the company is working now, or the enterprise, traditional enterprise work, there will be a central platform that will be running through centrally. It can be either mobile or it can be either centrally based, and it's all managed. The IT controls the endpoints, so it's all managed through the endpoint device or managed devices. The IT will control the access to the network, and they also check and manage who is realistically is the user, so they're managing the identity. However, if you think about it in a modern situation, it's more of a model-based or mobile-based platform or mobile-based infrastructure, where actually, if you think about it, the data flows and the perimeter is much wider. You can't really control your perimeter as such, because it's accessed through different multiple devices on different multiple locations at the same time, and the data is stored actually across different platforms, across different applications, etc. So realistically, we need to think, or the IT needs to think and control the operation of system of the device, so they can redefine what operation system is used, and they can give a permission according to it. And realistically, IT doesn't own the infrastructure anymore in those cases, so it's less of a reliant on infrastructures, the physical infrastructure, but on reliant on a data infrastructure. And realistically, moving forward, if you think about the zero trust access is a new norm, so anybody from your employees can access the data on any device, on any location. For you, it's more of what you can actually do and how you can protect the data flow. And the main idea and the main point for the new infrastructure, for the IT, for managing the new infrastructure, is actually looking about the safeguarding of the mission critical business data, how it actually goes around, where it's located, and how quickly and easily you can actually control the data flow, and who can access the data, and how you can secure the data across different devices, across different applications, and obviously different networks. And a lot of people actually were asking what can go wrong. There is a Murphy's law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, realistically. And in remote work, when we were facing, there is two different approaches. Either you can actually rely on legacy technologies that you already have within your company, and you just try to expand your existing technologies. So in order to get the access for the remote worker for employees, you just doubling down on VPNs and buying the black boxes, as we call them, and trying to rack it up. But at the same time, what happens is the more people enroll to the remote work access or remote work, the more strain it will be for your service, for your VPNs. So the more delays there will be and latencies there will be from your access. So realistically, your productivity will be impacted, and then you need to realistically stack up the black boxes. You need to stack up the laptops. Then there will be the more the access, it will be the more device you have to manage. And realistically, what will happen in the current days, if you think about it, apart from the pandemic, apart from the remote work, there is a huge risk for the companies. Doesn't matter where they're coming from. And the biggest maybe benefit for the company nowadays is the agility. How quickly can they adapt? How quickly they can scale down or scale up? Depends on the needs of the company. And based on that, the legacy technology is not ideal, because if company will shrink, you as a company, as IT, you will still have those black boxes lying on your shelves, and all that heavy systems that is actually on the background that you might not need, and you still have it. And while the time flies, they're not becoming newer, they're becoming just an older technology, and they're becoming slower. So you have to realistically update it. But at the same time, if you'll decide on the second connect, or the second part of the question, if you'll think about it, what can also go wrong? It's a question around the risks. If you'll manage, you can manage with the cloud your day-to-day or physical remote access, but then you have the risk factor. And it's also actually how you manage the risk of getting or providing the people to get remote access. There is an approach that you actually lock down everything and all the applications. You lock down or close any access or unnecessary access, what you can do. But realistically, it will just create unnecessary inconvenience for your employees. And even from my experience, and from experience, I believe in the audience, you always tend to find a workaround for something that doesn't work. The good example would be a long time ago, not so long time, but some time ago, we came across one of the meetings actually with one of the CEOs, and he had two laptops on their desk. One of them was a managed device, and one of them was an unmanaged device. So on managed device, he was working day in, day out, but on unmanaged device, he was checking what he can't actually access on the managed device. So there's always a workaround how they can actually work around the people. And if you have a lot of blocks and a lot of restrictions, ultimately there will be more and more complaints to help from the employees, from the users, and it won't help nor the IT department handling those tickets or raise tickets, nor the productivity of the companies. And realistically, all of this slow down or reduction of productivity will drive the cost up, because people won't be able to perform as they should be, and then at the same time it will be actually eliminating all the benefits of BYOD if you want to allow the people to use it. So the question you might have is actually, what is the solution? If from one side, if you rely on managed devices, it will bring a cost up, and then realistically the inconvenience of managing it externally when there is a restriction for your IT departments to do it. Or on the other hand, if you allow BYOD devices, then there will be increased risks. We believe that there is a platform called, can you still see my screen? We believe there is a platform called SASE that we actually propose, or we manage. And if on glance, if you look about it and if you think about it, it allows you to actually to manage all your data with one platform. You can manage who actually access it, how it's been used, where the data flows, etc. So first of all, in any, as a first point on the screen, we scan data in the cloud. So anything that goes actually from your device or from BYOD device to your cloud application, to your cloud management application is scanned, is checked, that there is no threats in that data that have been uploaded into the data at rest. So there is an elimination of any viruses or any malware going into your actually cloud application. We also protect the data on the managed device, either it's real-time access control or DLP or any actually threat protection for the managed application on the managed device. Or actually, we can also do the web security on the managed device. So we can allow and check what actually URLs and what can be accessed on the web. We can block it. We can restrict it to, for example, to on view only. Let's say it's a Facebook, like a very common application that we came across, and we can make sure that this actually application or this actually web can only be accessed as view only, so they can't post anything from the managed device, or they can't send any data on the managed device. Fourth one is actually data protection on unmanaged device, so on the personal device. We can do it agentlessly, which actually brings down the time for enrolling the solution into the company significantly. You don't need any agents. It's all done through the reverse proxy. And then you can actually see it agentless as in real time, and you can control the access to that application, to that device, not device, but to that information or data in real time. And you can also use visibility and DLP. And then the fifth point, we can also provide you this identity control IDP, either it's by ourselves, by our solution, or we work actually with big IDP providers such as Okta, Do Security, or any other companies, actually the big game players in the industry. Or if you don't want to have it with any of those suppliers, we can provide it with our one. At the same time, if you're already using the IDP solution, so you have like a gatekeeper, as we say. But the biggest question is what is happening once your gatekeepers actually unlock the door. So once the user is in there, what are they doing? With general IDP solutions, you can't manage that, whereas in our case, visibility is the key. So we can see what data has been accessed, what has been done with the data. So we can provide you with analytics of what the data flows and login as well. And we can also actually get the anomaly detection services by you. And the last but not least is the zero trust network access. So we can manage the access, we can do the DLP, and anything for internal application with agent or agentless. It's dependent on your choice or how you would like to manage it. That would be, I think, it from my side. If there's any questions from the audience or any recommendations or any questions at all, please feel free to reach us.